Now that I've listened to everything by Black Sabbath, I can now pretend to be a metal veteran and flog the superiority in my music taste for all to see. If disliking Black Sabbath is a terrible thing, be sure to drop subscribe to let me know that you agree. Also, just a reminder that these are all my opinion. Tell me when your favourite song shows up on the list, and I'll give you a comment a heart. This is the twisting of a beautiful age-old story that I've absolutely no respect for with every ounce of my soul. The most underwhelming shit I've ever heard. The nothings get more nothing as the albums go by. I find it stupid how this album yells so much at Christianity and yet uses Nordic folklore. One of the biggest bands in the world, and they produce something that falls flat in basically every area. Honestly, there just isn't much here for me. Uninteresting and sorely developed philosophy on why God is a cruel. Lack of creativity. Underwhelming again. Oh, dirty woman, they don't mess around. Yes they do. Why ever write music at this point? Honestly, this wasn't well placed at all. I respect interludes of this nature, but this didn't absolutely need to be here. If the mixing weren't so bad, it would hold up to some of the less great stuff on their earlier records. I'm getting the same feel as I did with Super Collider by Megadeth with this one. Hollow. Makes fun of the theme more than making a serious discussion, if I'm being honest. Interlude track, have a sandwich. That chorus doesn't make any sense. A voodoo is a doll that represents you, not bloody Medusa. Iron Man type beat. Should have been on the original release. It's a better album closer, still really not that good. Illusion of unique music. Just tell your father that you're sorry. More blatant and underdeveloped God disrespect. Why do they keep making power ballads? They're not very good at it. Imagine if in Fade to Black, James Hetfield said Fade to Black 50 times during the main riff. Black Sabbath becoming a generic and a genre they invented is the 8th cardinal sin. I honestly don't know about the singing here. Lyrics are more funny than I think they intended. Sometimes even an interlude track can't disguise how insubstantial an album is. I like the chords, and that's about it. Is someone whistling into this song? This song speaks of the exact thing they're becoming. How tragic. Hollow 2, ballad version. In one ear, out the other. Good bass though. This one lasts way too long for what it is. I liked the love sop songs on the debut, and mostly only on the debut. Maniacal laughing. These lyrics just ain't all that, honestly. Kind of a silly way of telling me what binary is. Nothing to gain here, nothing to lose either. Unfortunately, Dio pulled this type of song off better than Ozzy did. The transition was hella dope, but it's basically just a long song split into 3. Nice try. So what? Are you Nordic? Is that why you don't like Christians? I don't know if it's the actual song or the remaster, but the cutoff at the end totally ruins it. An unfortunately honest song spoken from the depths of Ozzy's close-minded heart. Christian's anthem. It's like he converted his text messages into lyrics. It would explain why it doesn't translate very well. Second half was really underwhelming. Not a standout track on the album, to be honest, nor is the theme a groundbreaking discovery. I believe this song is in the perspective of God towards humanity, which is interesting. System of a Down did it better though. May have lashed out at the rest of the album prior to this, but seeing it make a concept album like this is kind of interesting. I still don't like the execution. Pretty average. Some of the vibratos on the guitar were nice. Honestly, the cryptic lyricism is pretty good, but like the only good part, to be honest. There wasn't much to this aside from the theme. I liked the chorus. For what the song is about, I don't think the instrumentation precedes that at all. In this case, it kind of takes from the song. Honestly, this one just bored me. It's an alright riff though. This is like a remake of the Evil Woman track from Ozzy's era of Black Sabbath. I honestly just prefer Ozzy's version. As much as this song really just sucks, I can't hate it. It's funny. It's comedic to me that Black Sabbath, father of metal, would release a song like this. A great intro song, honestly. Nothing too unique, but it introduces the first song very well. Pretty solid interlude, not gonna lie. I like the contrast it offered. Didn't like the intro to the song, but the rest was strong enough to have been on the original release.
Finally, some good fucking food.
The title is actually hilarious when you figure out what it means. It has the same qualities of the rest of the album, but it's becoming a bit samey again. And actually not a bad song. I actually appreciate the transition.
I am the Almighty, holier than thou.
Did old school Pantera copy this sound? Bit too commercial, puts it below the rest of the album. You already shot your shot with Can't Get Close Enough, don't know why you're trying again. Another transition sin on the album, but I like the sound at the absolute least. Let's All Love Lame. Lacking a lot. Can see why it wasn't originally included. Could have really just not added this and let I be the album closer like it deserves to be. Awesome ass riff. Lyrics, not so much. More of the same from this album, but the 3/4 time signature was fun as. Sonically actually quite pleasant, but how tasteful. basically no identity, but I can vibe with the lyrics, personally. Guitar work is great. A band that time and time again spits in the face of the Lord your God and yet writes a song of prayer. I don't get it. Pretty standout theme. Typical of Black Sabbath to use the Bible. Typical also in everything else. I'd rate this higher, but the anti-religious topic is a bit overpowering for me on this one. Sabbath sound is absolutely and permanently out the window. If this were released by anyone else, it'd be much more highly acclaimed. I like the riffs. Why is this the closing track though? Bass part really goes. Chorus is pretty catchy, and a way better mix than the previous version of this song. I like the vocal melody in the chorus. It doesn't feel like it offers much significance. Not bad though, of course, just not exceptional. It pisses me off how much I liked this unoriginal disaster. Black Sabbath, the band that pioneered heavy metal, now sports the blues jazz colours on their sleeve. The guitar work is actually really good here, and I can imagine the Freddy guy with his magnificent stars performing these vocals. If it weren't for the really samey sound, this track would have been an outright incredible closing track. I think the theme is pretty good, but it's a bit too average of a song. Ozzy carried. Interesting tone shift. Just some pretty good heavy metal. I can't come up with much to add. I miss Ozzy. Okay, the jump from slow to fast was actually really good. While I have appreciation for it, the piano ballad didn't quite have as much impact as I would have liked. Eat up, yum yum. Also, drum solo. I've noticed this album took a very drastic 90s turn all of a sudden, and it's kind of working. I don't know, this album's a bit overhated. It feels like an early 2000s cartoon opening theme. Guitar solo goodness. It actually sounded quite good too. What a strange thing to sing about. Classic Sabbath. While not exceptional, it's absolutely a lot more listenable than some other stuff that Black Sabbath has released over the years. Brings up an interesting topic, but as a song, it's a bit of a letdown in the original release, which is mainly just bangers. Instrumental bait dragged the song out for me. Lyrically, I appreciate the simplicity of it. Gives us some value while letting you enjoy the instruments primarily. Run to the hills. I'm not a good singer. Honestly, even though this was made for a movie, it just feels way too short. Depressed flat earther anthem. The bridge was a great surprise. I love the melodic aspect of it. Aside from the vocalist, the instruments are actually pretty close to the original Black Sabbath sound. Black Sabbath have been getting into uncommon time signatures a bit lately. Either that, or it's the rhythm that makes it sound that way. This went absolutely balls deep into jazz right after the lyrics concluded. That's funny. Guitar work on this album has been peak since the 70s in my opinion. Thematically mature and appropriate at least for the time that Black Sabbath had released it, especially after Technical Ecstasy. The song for the most part was pretty but the solo was brilliant. Love the atmosphere of it. Just good songs on this album, but it doesn't really feel like this album had much of an aim or momentum. Last verse was real AF. Nothing super groundbreaking though. Opening riff goes pretty nicely with the drums, and surprisingly, this was quite enjoyable, and not for any specific reason. Living in a life obviously unhealthy for me, but still needing to live it is unfortunately relatable. Wish it sounded unique. Probably the strongest track on the album, but this album suffers bloat, so it didn't have the momentum that it deserved. The song structure is pretty interesting. The drum and the guitar had some cool back and forth action. Thematically, probably one of the stronger Black Sabbath songs. Black Sabbath showing a bit more of their progressive side. While unremarkable in the great scheme of Black Sabbath, this track stands out, mainly for being a clear sign of continuous effort from the band. On the same spiritual level of it's all shits and giggles until someone giggles and shits. Beautifully written, and stolen from Dave Walker, rewritten or not. Appropriately dedicated though. Doom metal is what held Black Sabbath together in my opinion, and it's really good on this album. Yo, 7/8 Sabbath song, what? The first Black Sabbath record being blues is funny to me, good stuff. There's a touch of classical in here with the piano, I think. Not gonna lie, the potential of this album if it had the original Sabbath sound would be astonishing. Yes, Tony, we know you like Freddie Mercury. Also, this song is cool as. Lyrics are absolutely brilliant. Notice that Black Sabbath is taking a stronger hard rock approach than heavy metal. The guitar work is nothing exceptional, but it tickled my fancy a bit. W song title, a bit of a fun way to close the album. Crazy riff. I really think this would have had so much to offer on 13. I really wish this one was longer. It sounded amazing. An interesting way to end the track, not gonna lie. Sounds like King Crimson. I like King Crimson. Epic AF! And the lyrics are also great. Bass in the oldest metal albums is a lot more prominent than most metal now, and I wish it stayed that way. I actually appreciate the upbeat nature of the song, and the poor mixing serves it with nostalgic value more than anything else. A little bit of a tired theme, but it wasn't done terribly, so I can't complain. The title makes it more thought-provoking than it otherwise would have been. It's a bit sad that with Dio, they ditched the older sound that created Black Sabbath and cemented them as rock legends, for a sound already mastered by many before them. Tempo change towards the middle was so good. Highlight of their 90s phase, not gonna lie. As a collective piece, this album shows the degradation of the band at the time into what would become the Dio era of Black Sabbath. Sounds like what the title implies. I quite like it actually. On its own, it's a good song, but it doesn't offer much to the album. Final part had an oddly enticing emptiness though. Traditional doom metal with a touch of blues and some great compositioning. Over the albums, Ozzy is becoming a much more expressive vocalist, more suiting for the great lyrics such as the ones on this track. Age-old jabs at the music industry. What a brilliant choice for a closing track. The interlude not only does what their record label asked, but also shits on them in the process. My respect. This here is Black Sabbath. This makes me happy. This does put a smile on my face. A totally new sound that doesn't feel out of place. I like that. I love the way the song opens. Killer riffs and a great sound. I love how each album has its own identity. Nitpicky, but I think Solitude should have been the closer instead. Otherwise, this is pretty solid. Coming from fresh ears, my perspective is that this sounds like Iron Maiden in their prime. I like the inclusion of electronic sounds in their early discography. Amateurish vocals, but the usual great 70s instrumental. The album delivers a constant theme of living life the way that you want, which is sometimes betrayed by the deeper cuts, but never by the sound. Lyrically sublime, influential as, and wish the label would have just let them call the album Snowblind. Now that Ozzy is back, you wonder why he was kicked out in the first place. Every song on the album so far is amazing. Return of the Bongos! This is like watching your son come back home after years of ruining his own life. Consistently interesting and fun to listen to. Great closer to the first metal album ever. Peak guitar work since Paranoid in my opinion. I really like the opening riff. This is probably my favorite song in the last few albums now. It just sounds so great. It sounds like they artificially slowed down Ozzy's voice. The first metal album had a friggin' harmonica. That's metal as. That's such a well-developed energy as well. That breakdown is awesome. Sonically really sounds like Hotel California, but I like that song, and this has its own unique power to it. 70s thrash metal! I am really loving the sound of this album, would be great for road trips. I see now, they gave me a good stuff then edged me for 40 years before giving it back to me, sneaky bastards. Political metal has always been at the top of its game, structurally bulletproof. Definitely Black Sabbath's stairway to heaven, as the saying goes. It's almost at the point of progressive, the complexity of the song, structure-wise. Groovy! They beat Pantera to the punch. The first metal song, and deserves the title too, such a menacing sound. Okay, these Ozzy vocals are absolutely my favorite of his. The first catchy metal song, lots of firsts on this album. Holds up to this day, catchy, great riff, iconic, any name you can give it. And honestly amazing mid-album afterburn. I love the use of bongos and the bass. Absolutely iconic and timeless. When I recalled the riff 2 years ago, I expected it to have been a 2020 song.